Liz Coley, and welcome back to Undercover Reading. We're reading The Captain's Kid, Chapter 8, Part 4. Back at the rec center, I tuned and jumped right into the music, picking up the chords by ear. Audrey couldn't take her eyes off me. I guess it's true that girls can't resist a musician. After the session, Janik, the guy in charge, gave me the thumbs up. Way to go, Webb. Plan on practice every Tuesday night as a regular thing, and I'll let you know about the extra gigs. I'm trying to get us booked for some birthdays. Audrey grabbed me by the hand and dragged me off to the garden. Too public here, she said, and I could only hope that she meant what I thought she meant, to get me alone for a rerun of last night's adventure in lip mashing. Sure enough, as soon as we got to the garden, while I examined the area to be sure it was clear of insane weed bots, she spotted a bench under a tree with weeping branches covered in pink flowers. Perfect. I could play her song to set the mood, and she could make me glad to be alive. We ducked behind the floral privacy curtain, and Audrey threw her arms around my neck and dragged me down to her level. I dropped the unnecessary mandolute on my toe with a muffled yelp. Audrey laughed. Are you okay? I'll live. No, maybe I won't. I'm going into shock. Save me, Audrey, save me. She pushed me over to the bench, and for a moment I was afraid she would insist on taking off my shoe and checking for broken toes, but she didn't. She sat on my lap, which put her at exactly the right height for kissing, which I was about to do with enthusiasm when I caught sight of a familiar dad-like person heading down the path toward us. Brandon, he called. I didn't expect to see you here. His hands were cupped. Miss Jan next to him took something from them and popped it in her mouth. Likewise, I called back, hint, hint. Here, try one of the new blackberries. They're just coming ripe around the chapel. Jan and I have eaten most of them. Pink juice slipped between the cracks of his fingers. Jan and I? Audrey was already off my lap and sitting primly beside me. Thanks, sir. I took a berry as well, but I couldn't manage to swallow it. Jan and I? His mouth said the words in an easy, practiced way. Aren't they lovely? Miss Jan said. Gordon and I left a few on the canes if you two want to pick. The light fluffed through her hair, making her look more like a girl and less like my teacher. We're allowed? Audrey asked. Gordon and I? My mouth still wasn't up to working. My eyes asked Dad what the heck he was doing here all dressed up and spiffy, his hair combed, morning beard vanished. I tried to call you, he said. I was all set for my long, relaxing read when Jan called and invited me to 7-day services. I hate to admit how long it's been, and I never realized how much I was missing it. Your mother and I always went when we were on mission. He squinted at my bare arm. No wonder I couldn't get you. Where's your comm? I dropped my gaze. I couldn't find it in the room this morning. Dad humphed. If it doesn't turn up by the end of today, go pick up a new one from security. Can't have you running around untraceable and out of touch. That sounded kind of appealing right now, vanishing. Miss Jan patted my arm. Maybe you'll come with us next week, she said. Maybe, I mumbled. Excellent. Dad swallowed another berry. Jan, I think we are de trop here. She winked at him, and as they walked off, heads close together in conversation, I had to wonder what being de trop together meant, and whether it was a good thing. That was weird, I whispered to Audrey when they were a few feet down the path. What? She asked. My dad going and... forget it. I think it's cute, she said. My dad, the captain, was not supposed to be cute. I shuddered. Let's go to the rec center, I said. I need to run, clear my head. You run. I'll swim. The thought of Audrey in her swimsuit outracing the current cleared my mind of anything else, even before I hit the treadmill. Between schoolwork for the new quarter and band practice and spending time with Audrey, I wasn't making anything I could call progress on examining my 200,000 files. River Swift didn't signal me in any way that he had a lead, and he hadn't broken out and dropped by for a private visit. The weeks slipped by far too fast. The black sky outside the observation ports was peppered with stars, one exceptionally bright one in the center, and that grew larger, until Esperanza's 5-planet system stood out from the background. 2 Jupiter-sized planets appeared first, one far out and one much closer in. Then one of the brighter dots took on a bluish tint. That had to be Esperanza itself, the massive ocean reflecting sunlight back through a cloudless sky. The first time Dad pointed it out, My throat tightened. The goal was in sight, a planet that had come to mean a lot to me before I ever set eyes on it. Now that I could see it, the countdown became more real. My anxiety levels shot up. I didn't have much time left to prevent the big mistake, the disaster the Sequuianos didn't even know was coming at them. And Dad was exactly the opposite. The closer we got, the more lighthearted he became. He would grin at me and say, "Almost there," as if he wanted to say more. It struck me as more than strange, unless he was processing all this as bringing meaning to Mom's death. And closure. I guess the way things might be going with Miss Jan, he needed closure even more than I did. We were only 2 weeks out from arrival when I had my breakthrough, and I wanted to smack myself for missing it all this time. Lost under the mountain of reports about Esperanza's 2 colonies, I finally opened the short history Miss Jan had recommended months ago. The introductory chapters covered the survey process and how in a massive effort, the 1,617 Earth-like planets they had discovered at that time were investigated. They'd been classified as Earth-like by telescopic analysis, based on size and spectrum and distance from their suns. But after the planetary survey, they were sorted into buckets: 415 habitable, 1,179 uninhabitable, and 23 quarantined, which meant they were home to native animal life more advanced than single-celled. The quarantine made them planet-wide nature preserves. None of those 23 had presented anything near human intelligence, though. Too bad. That would have been so cool. I flipped ahead to the registry of the 415 habitable planets. The author of the book mentioned long-term weather cycles that could be deceptive at the time of survey. Planets with very long or tilted orbits, or suns with their own flares and weather patterns. And there it was, hidden in a footnote. The names of the 5 planets listed as examples: Flammer 5, Toronto, New Capricorn, Allspice, and Esperanza. What did it say about Esperanza specifically? My eyes were dry and achy from reading, but I couldn't tear myself away. It looked like River Swift was right about Esperanza. The footnote said that due to the tidal effects from the 2 Jovians in the system, a slow, deep current in the ocean correlated with a 60-year cycle of wet, dry periods. The planet had been surveyed and bucketed as dry but habitable during the wettest part of the cycle. And in conclusion, the footnote author cautioned, planets with extremely wet-dry, hot-cold, or light-dark cycles should be considered only marginally habitable at best. I flipped back. The publication date of the book was more than 20 years after the colony ships settled the Pescados and Sequuianos. So, to give the Space Survey Corps benefit of the doubt, they hadn't understood the climatic supercycles when Esperanza was picked for the first wave of colonies. It wasn't a plot. It was a mistake. A huge one. Dang and double dang. They could have done more to help, scheduled more frequent contact and resupply runs, dropped some smart scientists on the planet to do something. They should have done more. But now what? It was too late. The hopeful experiment was over. My heart hurt. This is what Dad called being between a rock and a hard place. The Sequuianos couldn't stay. The marginally habitable surface couldn't sustain them long term. They wouldn't be happy as refugees on Earth. Blame human nature. The early results from my psych experiment were possibly more dramatic than I had expected. We needed another choice. Did they stay or did they come home? Neither. You can't solve one mistake with another. And then, in a flash of inspiration, I had it the third way. But I needed serious help to pull it off. I had to talk to River Swift and Masuna together somehow. And that's the end of tonight's reading. See you tomorrow.